So we have a special presentation with Todd Fabosi and Jim Yanger from CDRPC, talking about the regional greenhouse gas inventory and regional climate action plan. We're going to get to that in a minute. Thank you for joining us. But Don, you want to just do the roll?
Yep, sure thing.
Thank you.
I've been checking people off as they come in. I have Dave's here, Lisa, Will Powers. I don't see him on here yet. Deb's here, John's here, Jennifer Phillips. I think she's going to be on, but Kara.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, Jennifer? Okay. Kara Boyle. Not here yet. Oh, she wasn't going to be here. Okay. Matt Stinchcom, Matthew Mercier.
Matthew Mercier just joined.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, I just joined.
No problem. Joshua Cohen.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Don.
Hey, Joshua.
Good. Yep. Sean Casey here. Stan Yarian. Don't see him. John Leone. Loney. Kathy's here. Betsy's here. Bill Mancini won't be able to make it. Tom Pano. I'm here. You're here, Tom? Okay, thanks. And Laura was not going to be able to be here. Supervisor Adams or Denal, Supervisor Collins. I see
We're both here, Don.
You're here, okay. Denal's here.
And I'm also
I saw
here.
Brenda log
Oh,
in
you're here.
too.
Brenda's on here. Okay, good. Okay, parents. Not
You
here.
probably don't recognize me because of the hat hair.
Okay.
Looks fine.
Christina. I don't see, and I don't see Lindsay from CCE. Okay, that covers everyone, I believe.
And I think Will Powers logged on too.
Will Powers on here? Yep, I see him. Okay, thanks.
Have we missed anyone?
Yes.
I will sign others on as they appear. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we have like I said, okay, Terrence is on. You got that.
Yep.
Let's jump right in. Let's just see if there are any comments on the minutes from last month. Any corrections? If not, we'll take a motion in a second to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Steve.
I second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. If anyone is opposed, please speak up. Great. Okay, Todd and Jim, good to see you again, both of you. We're excited to jump right in and get an update on the progress you've been making and chat about how we can collaborate.
All right, great. Thanks for having us. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what we'd like to do today, and we'll bring up a slide presentation, and I'm going to talk just to introduce what we're up to. I'm going to turn it over to Jim Yanger from Climate Action Associates, our lead consultant, and then I'll come back on at the end to talk about what the kind of the ask is, or the opportunity for you to engage in providing us some feedback. So Jim, can you get access to share the PowerPoint?
All right, let me see if I can figure out how to share on Google Meet here. Don't usually use this one. Let's try. Is that sharing?
Yep.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, let me go to from beginning. So is that in full share mode?
It's the slide is small, so if you could make that bigger, either
It's
by
small?
going to, like, if you could do presentation mode, or
I just went into presentation mode. Okay, so let me try again.
okay, maybe
So,
just didn't translate.
yeah, well that's let me try one more time.
Yeah, we're still showing it in just as is open, not in presentation mode.
Or just maybe just zoom in if that's not going to work. Get rid of the notes section.
Yeah, it should. I'm going to the window, the PowerPoint window, and putting it into presentation mode.
Yeah, it's not working.
Try
I guess.
clicking on it from the beginning again, or yeah, just no, it's not doing it. All right. Yeah, well, maybe you can just slide down the notes and slide over the slides so you can just see the main screen.
Okay.
Yeah, just zoom that in. I think it'll be fine.
Is that working?
Yeah,
Yeah,
as big as you can go is
that's
great.
good. That'll work.
I think we can see it. That's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
All right. So, what the Capital District Regional Planning has been up to, and I think we may have introduced this topic in our previous meeting, but we have and are in the process of developing what we're calling a Capital Region Climate Action Collaborative. And it's a way to coordinate in the 8-county capital region, climate action for greenhouse gas mitigation. So our focus here is mitigation. So Jim, hit the next slide.
Did that change?
Yep.
Okay.
And so this funding is coming from EPA. Hopefully it continues to come, but so far it has come from EPA. And what this funding is essentially funding across the whole country to metropolitan regions over a certain population threshold. So there were 65 different urban regions in the country that got money to develop a climate action plan. And each of the states also got money to develop their own climate action plan. And so we've been in the midst of this for about a year and a half. And and as the slide notes, there were 3 other recipients besides the capital region, as far as metropolitan regions. So the Buffalo region, the Rochester region, and New York City metro region all are developing plans as well. And so we have, through the last year and a half, been working on meeting the first objective of this program, which was to develop a preliminary or what they called a priority climate action plan, in which we identified some of the key sectors for emissions and focused on those in real short order, because there was a grant program for implementation grants tied to this with a pretty short timeline, a 6-month timeline to turn things around. And so for that process, we used a previous greenhouse gas inventory that went down to the community level, because that's one of the requirements. And that was done by Jim's firm back in 2012. And then we essentially created this PCAP, which is available on our website. But now we're in the process of developing a full climate action plan and rounding out the other sectors. Jim, you can go to the next slide. And so, well, this is an agenda. This shows obviously the region that we're covering, and what we want to talk about today really is our inventory, because we've now updated the inventory with 2022, some 2023 data, and Jim's going to talk all about that as he's created the inventory for us. And we've been developing mitigation measures for each of the sectors, ways that we can reduce the greenhouse gases emitted in each of those sectors. And so really our thinking is these are kind of best practices for the kinds of things that we can do in this region, and that really the kind of things we're already doing in the region in different places. And so we thought of our approach as kind of creating a container for all the things that are going on. And we started our engagement at the regional scale, and we worked with a series of regional organizations, such as the regional MPO that does transportation planning, the Capital Region Transportation Council, and then we went to the other groups that are doing certain things, like with housing, and we worked and got information and input from the Clean Energy Hub. That's a program funded by NYSERDA and goes to the Affordable Housing Partnership, based out of Albany, and a coalition of other organizations that they work with. And we worked with them. We reached out to ag groups, we reached out to business groups, and we essentially have come up with these measures that we want to show you today, and then actually get you to comment on, and maybe you can find it useful. Hopefully we think you'll find it useful when you do your own climate action planning, to be able to kind of have a regional menu to look at. And so And so that's the general gist of what we've been doing, is developing these measures, developing the inventory, and now we're in the engagement phase. So I'll come back to engagement and what we're asking of you, but I want to turn it over to Jim to be able to just talk through the inventory that has been updated and the measures that we have developed up to now.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Can everyone hear me? And just to let everyone know, I am now on the screen on my window for moving this presentation forward. I'm not on the Google Meet, so I can't see anyone's face. So if anyone has any questions or comments, please just blur it out because I won't be able to see your reactions. So, all right, Todd, let me just, let's start back a little bit. I'm going to talk about our regional greenhouse gas inventory work. This is broken down now into municipalities. So we're working, our intention here is to collaborate and coordinate with each municipality doing their own climate action plans to provide support to those, and also to just collaborate both on the measures and the strategies that are incorporated as well. So Todd gave you an overview. I'm going to start this by talking about our inventory. What you're seeing here is the original 2010 inventory we did in 2012. That gives you a flavor for how the emissions are different across the region, and we have updated this. So we don't have the geospatial map yet updated, but for those of you who were in our presentation in last year at HVCC, we had the regional analysis done at that point. We hadn't had the municipal one done, and we were pleased to report that our emissions since 2010 have declined. We think around 12%, from 15.87 million tons down to 14.1, driven by electricity, cleaner electricity, and better transportation, lower VMT, and a variety of things that we presented there. But since that time, we have been focusing on providing this information down at a municipal level. And this is a much bigger effort to take all the data sources we're dealing with and put them specifically into every geospatially located into every single municipality. And so we've been doing that. And if you now go on CDRPC's website, and you'll be able to find it, and there's an active dashboard. I think it's there, Todd, or I don't know if it's active yet, but we're in the process of working on it. It may be active.
It is, and I'll point that out to you at the end when I go over everything. And just to go back for a second, just to clarify, that map was an excerpt, but Columbia County was actually part of the original inventory, but that was an excerpt for other purposes from the previous inventory. So you were included in that, and you will be able to compare your previous inventory to this one. So, and back to you, Jim.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So the dashboard is there. So this is an image now for Columbia County. And if you go to the dashboard, you can go to all the counties there and kind of click around and start getting a flavor on how the emissions are different across counties and different municipalities. So this is an expert from Columbia County. And if you look on the left side, this is emissions by what we call subsector within greenhouse gas inventory protocol, which is kind of an easy way to understand emissions at the highest level. The blue, the dark blue is we call the built environment. So this is the emissions from from energy related emissions in stationary buildings. So residential, commercial, industrial buildings primarily. This is what we call the built environment in greenhouse gas kind of accounting language. The other, and Columbia County is very evenly divided. So transportation is also the orange pie here, is also the big piece, 42%. And this is not a surprise. This is a typical. Sometimes you have, and you'll see if you look at different counties and different municipalities, these wedges change quite a lot. But this is not surprising for Columbia County. The green wedge up here on the upper left is agriculture. Columbia County does have, a fairly robust agriculture and crops and livestock, etc. So it's 9%. This is reasonably high. Other counties, especially more urban ones, would have almost nothing or very little. So your flavor is different.
Jim, can I burst
Yes,
in
please.
with a question?
Absolutely.
Does that include forestry? Is that AFOLU or is it just
No.
crop?
So right. So this is just, and I'll go through that. So we have the removals piece or the land use piece is not included in this yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yes. So that, and in fact, we're looking forward to working with you to kind of incorporate all this correctly. So this is just the emissions from soils and ag soils. So and the other pieces you can see the red color one up here is waste. So this would be solid waste. So landfill, incineration, wastewater. And for those of you who do these inventories locally, this is how we do them for community planning. You'll see you have a footprint here, even though Columbia County does not have an active landfill. You do have some closed ones, I think. But local emission inventories protocol, we attribute emissions to community activity. So we attribute it to the amount of waste you generate, the amount of transportation demand. We do account for point sources for like landfills and things. We put them in here, but they're not rolled up in these totals. So, and if you go to the dashboard, and we can teach you more about that. But this method is used so communities can attribute their emissions to activities they can control, like the amount of waste you generate, for example. So, and you'll see that's different. Like if you look at a state emission inventory, they don't do that. They only put in point sources, which is not as useful for local action planning. So on the right side, you'll just see here's a breakdown by what we call source. So this is the physical basis of the emission. So you see like gasoline on the bottom. Oil and propane is actually a combination here between on-road diesel and home or commercial use of heating fuels and propane. We're probably going to break up this chart into on-road diesel versus stationary just to make it more clear. But anyway, you can go through and see the flavor of different things here. So now I'm going to scroll through. I add in a couple of snapshots for individual communities in Columbia County. Again, at the dashboard, you can go through and find your own. But just to show you the flavor difference here, again, here's the city of Hudson. So obviously this is going to have a very different profile than the county as a whole and individual municipalities and more rural flavor. So on the left side, you can see the built environment. This is the buildings stock is a bigger portion than transportation now. And, you know, this is sometimes cities are mixed. This one is a little bit more towards the buildings over transportation. And you'll see that the wedge for agriculture is now missing here. And you'll see the industrial and refrigerants tab is a little higher. So what the refrigerants tab is your product use. So primarily this wedge would also have industry, but I don't believe there's a big point source industry in Hudson. So this is really just your refrigerant usage, you know, air conditioners and products that you may use that are greenhouse gases. So this is a different flavor. And if we go down to, I just pulled New Lebanon as an example. Again, you'll see everything changes. So now we're back to a more even split between buildings and transportation. Transportation's a little bit higher, which isn't a surprise because it's a more spread out rural community. So people have to drive farther to get to the destination as opposed to within a city. But you'll see a much larger ag footprint here, 12.74%. And again, so this means for this community, this is an important sector to contribute. And in fact, as we just discussed, when we add the land use and the removals component to this, it's going to make this even more important. So again, I think that the message of our work here is that regionally we have an impact on emissions, but local action is going to be different. And our goal is to try to help empower local action in different ways, but also help roll up the benefits of our actions to show regionally, collectively, how together we can help address the climate change issue that we have. So anyway, so again, I just put in these three. Go to your own community and click around. But I do want to add some caveats to this. This is new work that has happened since our last presentation. And when you start doing data work at a very granular level, it takes some time to get it right. So there may be a few issues or things that aren't correct yet that we may have made a mistake. So we found, for example, we put a point source in one community. It should have been in another because of a zip code issue. This kind of data things happen. So just one of the requests I have is when you look at your community's data, if you find something that doesn't look right or doesn't feel right, please bring it to us because in fact, we may be able to troubleshoot it. We could find an issue. We're pretty confident we're real close with this, but I just want to make sure that everyone who's giving feedback understands. that we would like you to look at these emissions and also comment on them as well, just to help us make sure we haven't messed up something. It should be obvious. Okay.
Jim, can I ask
Yeah.
a quick question? You mentioned that you might be breaking down like the on-road diesel as part of that big wedge of oil propane. When
Yes.
on the sector side on the left, do you expect or are you breaking this down further as well, like agriculture within agriculture,
Yes.
soils, tillage, manure, that kind of thing, or in the built environment, commercial, residential? I don't know what the
It's all
breakdown
there.
is.
Yeah,
It's
so
all
this is a screenshot. Like if we go to the actual, I mean, if we had time, we can bring up the website, but if you go to the actual dashboard, this is a live thing. So if you roll over the right side, the internal wedge breaks it down into subcategories. So transportation is on-road, off-road, marine, air, you know, a whole bunch of different categories. Built environment is residential, commercial, industrial, also power generation, T&D losses. So there's a lot more granularity in here. This is just
Great.
a static screenshot. And then on the other side, oil and propane is broken into diesel and other things. So the data behind this is much more granular than this pie chart. This is
Thank
just,
you.
yeah. So anyway,
Excuse me, what are T&D losses? I'm sorry, I don't know that.
oh, sure. Right. So that's called transmission and distribution loss. So that
Okay.
means there's two types. So for electricity, if you're consuming electricity to run something from the grid, you know, 5% of the power that, you know, roughly that you know, is lost on the line. So you think you're consuming, you know, 1,000, you know, 1 kilowatt, 5% of that's actually being lost. So it adds to emissions a little bit. And in the more important side is natural gas. So if you're using gas, for example, in a stove, there's losses that happen on the transmission distribution grid from the utility. And those are very powerful greenhouse gases because they leak out. It's usually a couple percent, but methane is leaked out as methane is not being burned. It's actually a pretty significant contributor to emissions.
So the Tennessee Valley pipeline that runs through Columbia County would be factored into this?
Yeah. So, well, actually, no. The transmission line running through would not be. So the way this protocol works, it's a good question, is that we take the gross consumption within the county. So at the retail level, so residential, commercial, and industrial sources, anything that's actually burned, we assume that the transmission lines that have, you know, that are delivering it to the point where it's burned is basically a 2 or 3% loss. So transmission lines that are going all the way through the county and not producing any, you know, and the gas isn't being burned there, we wouldn't count it in this protocol. I mean, maybe we should. I mean, it's
Well,
actually a good question.
I'm
But-
just thinking there are several distribution or pump stations throughout the county, and they release gas to test the lines
Okay.
multiple times a year. And I don't know if it's a significant factor, but certainly our neighbors are aware of it when it happens.
Yeah, and it might be. So what I can say is the fact that we take all the gas consumption and attribute a 2 or 2.5% loss to it is a pretty big footprint. Is it from that process where they're releasing gas for some reason? Can't really tie it
Okay.
back to the specific process, but you know, it's something that if you're, you know, take a look at that source, and if it doesn't make sense or we need to adjust a protocol thing, we could. But we know it's an issue and it is counted. And you know, maybe we can do it better, but that's how it's working right now. Okay, any other questions on the inventory stuff before I go back and talk about how the action plan is working and the kind of feedback we're looking for? That's the next.
Just
couple
one
slides.
question is
Yeah.
what, and you mentioned this, or Todd mentioned it, what do you attribute the 12% reduction since 2010 to mostly?
Yeah, so we had a slide on that in our other presentation. So there were like 3 key drivers, macro level drivers. So our electricity grid has become cleaner because of state policy. So we have more renewables on the grid. And so our electricity emissions have gone down. And in fact, our electricity consumption has gone up. It looks like about 10 or 20%. And our emissions have gone down. So as we have a footprint, we're seeing electrification happening, but our emissions from electricity have actually gone down. So, you know, it's a result of much cleaner electricity. So, and then we also have a signal from, and we got this data from the Transportation Council and also saw it in our state DOT transportation metrics where they're doing traffic counts. There has been a decline in total VMT since 2012. It kind of rose a little bit somewhere kind of in 2016, 17, started to decline a little bit. And then the COVID era happened. It dropped pretty substantially, but it's been rising again since then. But still, the total transportation demand has gone down. Partially work at home, where a lot of us are at home now, that kind of thing. So transportation and some industry sources have also left the region. We lost we lost a cement industry up in the north country, and a few other things. And that was a large source. So, but again, we don't have the story at each local community level. But we're hoping now with this granular data, we may see resolution of different communities where they can attribute to the changes to their own local policies, or for example, better EV penetration or something. So anyway,
Jim,
at a
do you know
macro level, that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's great. That's really fascinating. Do you know offhand what the changes in Columbia County since then?
Yeah. So it's at the actually. Hold on here a second. I'm not sharing it. We didn't put that one in this presentation yet, but I have a different version of this. I can just check real quick. Hold on. It's a 10% reduction since 2010. And each of your communities, you'll be able to get this soon on the dashboard, but each of your communities have different reductions. Some of them are 17 to 20, some of them are 2 or 3. So you'll be able to go through and check that out as well.
Great, thank you.
But again, as you go, and part of, and this is, again, when you look at data like this and you start to, it gets more granular and you start looking at it, is it precise? Like somebody's 17% down and someone's only 5? We need to work together to continuously troubleshoot it and make sure that these kind of more granular findings are accurate. So I just caution that this is new work as we start to go into much more detail. We don't want anyone to just jump to conclusions that it's, one is 17 and one is 5. Give us a chance to work together to, assess that and improve our confidence in that.
And I just want to jump in and say, and we've yet to put that on the dashboard. This is a work in progress. We just made it live yesterday, and there's still a lot of additional bells and whistles we intend to add to this, so that we will have an easy comparison eventually between the previous inventory and the one that we just updated.
Great. All right. Any other questions on inventory stuff before I move on? All right, not hearing anything, I'll move on then. Okay, so as Todd alluded to, the inventory is an important component of what we're doing, but part of it is really to coordinate at a regional level a climate action plan, or as EPA would call it, a comprehensive climate action plan. Now, all of you here, you are very interested in experts on climate change and action planning. And so many of you know that, of course, climate action planning includes resilience and adaptation and other things. We just want to make it clear this particular effort is focused on mitigation, recognizing, again, there's other components, but we're specifically looking at rolling up strategies to reduce our emissions footprint and at simultaneously increase carbon sequestration. So we do want to include the removals component and land use components as we discussed. But again, we won't have strategies in here in adaptation and resilience. Not that you shouldn't include them, but for this work, we're focusing on those 2 components. So I gave this at the Hudson Valley presentation. I think it's always good to discuss it within the concept of climate action planning. There's always, I don't know, it's confusion, but it's it helps to understand the different types of climate action planning. And so within the world that we operate in, there's really 3 ideas. And so the first one, government operations, is what many communities that we've worked with focus on. These are climate action plans for your governments, your municipalities as businesses, the things that you own and control. This makes sense. You understand it. You can set targets for it. You can buy things. You can change things. This is usually the first step in climate action planning at a municipal level. The next theme is the community scale, and this is more difficult. This is where you as a community, using maybe policy tools or other things at hand are now counting emissions across your whole community, and that's what our dashboard is. That this is community-wide, and now it's looking at engaging your community, working on policies and other things to start deflecting your emissions at that scale. So it's a more difficult task. It requires stakeholder engagement, community buy-in, that kind of thing. But they are often communities will do them together, but they are quite different in how you pursue them. The last one down here at the bottom, and people ask all the time, a regional climate action plan. What is this? What does it mean? And so within a regional context, CDRPC is coordinating this. Now, the watershed of communities within this in the 8-county region is 160 communities. And so clearly a regional entity is not a governance entity. CDRPC does not have jurisdiction. It's really more of a coordinated entity coordinating process to help create a collective voice for climate action, to provide products and tools, inventories, and also help communities identify things that they can do with different flavors. Again, rural communities, suburban, urban will have different flavors, but act in a way collectively so that actions will roll up in a single voice. So we can say as a region here, collectively working on this, we are going to reduce our emissions and here's how we're going to do it. So it's really more of a capacity building, more of an information support effort than it is, say, at a community scale where each of you may work on policy and zoning and codes to work specifically to influence emissions within your community. So hopefully that makes sense. We get this question a lot, and it really is, an evolving definition for what regional planning is on this. So with that, the process here is, again, we refer to developing strategies or measures within a sector and a regional scale, more of creating like a container of measures that reflect the options that are available in each of the communities in the region. So a measure within a regional climate action plan isn't, oh, here's a measure that everyone's going to do. So we recognize that with 160 communities, not everyone is going to be developing transit centers, for example. That's going to be focused on urban areas with enough density for transit, but we do list that as a measure. So our intent and goal here is to create this container list of measures that is inclusive and creates options that are available to all the communities. So when you're developing your own climate action plans, you can refer to them and help roll up your work to this collective regional voice. So to do this, and this is part of this process. So you're part of this focus group, because as Todd's going to explain, you're going to help provide feedback on our measures. But what we've been doing is convening focus groups across different themes, whether it's building or waste or transportation, ag. We bring them together, brainstorm what we think these measures should be. And then if the stakeholder group is happy with the design of the measure categories and we're getting real close, then we'll go back, then the nerd side of this, we'll go back and kind of model out what the benefits of those categories could be if we all implemented them across the region, theoretically. So then we can present what ideally the potential of our plan is. So that's a math portion of it, and that's separate. That's after we finish designing the measure. So this is a process, and as Todd alluded to, we're presenting here to Columbia County. Todd's group is going to be presenting this across the region to different counties and getting additional feedback from municipalities. So this is a slide. This is a little bit older. This is when we had finished only 3 of our sectors last year, and we had not updated the inventory, but we've moved beyond this. So now we're instead of 15.8 million tons, we're down to 14 something. And the measures that we had spec'd out in our first 3 sectors of buildings, transportation, and waste, we estimated that they could reduce emissions by roughly 66% by 2050. 12% by 2030, trying to be realistic with our assumptions. And also, I just want to point out that we did get some questions after our Hudson Valley Community College presentation about why are we not getting farther down the line here to 2050, more towards the state goals of carbon neutrality or 80%. And we just want to say the philosophy that was used for this is that we're quantifying the measures that are being implemented locally, but not factoring in the state policies that would also be included. So we're trying to position this as this is the emission reductions that the collective region can get operating local actions on its own. So, for example, by 2050, if the state cleans the grid to the extent that it wants to do, these reductions would go up significantly. It wouldn't be 66%, it would be more like 80. It'd be closer to neutrality. So I just want to bring that to attention. That's why, people looked at this and they're like, why isn't this the state's goals? It's because our quantification is really, again, focused on what you can accomplish locally. And we assume the state's going to do stuff too that's going to add to this. So again, I can't see if anyone has any questions on that, but I'm just going to proceed. Okay. All right. So in the transportation sector, we had 13 measures that we quantified, 13 measures categories. Okay. Some of them are transit, some of them are urban focused, some of them are shifting vehicles to electric or to alternative vehicles. There's a number of different things in there. And in the feedback template that Todd's going to talk about, all 13 are there. And the benefits of these, we estimate it to be roughly 30% of the total regional emissions if the measures that we identified were implemented across the region by these states. And we use scenario analysis, so we assume shifts of as part of our process, we took feedback on what we think shifts could be based on historical trends of, say, electrification and other things. That was part of the work. So within this sector, there we go. Within transportation, this is the actual 16 measures, and we don't need comment on it here. This is where what we're hoping is that you look at this, look at the spreadsheet, and say, is this a reasonable representation of the things that we would do in our own community in Columbia County? Because we want to make sure that these are written in a way that they are inclusive and that they describe things that are applicable, whether it's a farming community or whether it's a city or whatever. So we're reasonably close, but this may not be perfect. So suggest other measures or changes. And again, it's important for us to get the container right, because we'd like everyone's climate action plan to be able to fit into this in some way to tell our regional story. So we don't have time to debate all these measures. So I'm just going to go through each of the sectors, present them, and you'll be able to provide feedback later on. So within the built environment, again, houses, buildings, industries, we identified 12 measures categories. And we estimated and modeled the benefits of these to be roughly 30%, similar to transportation. It's not a surprise because they're similar sectors. At roughly 5 million tons by 2050 and maybe 1 million tons by 2030. Actually, I think we're doing better than that. If you look at our slide where we've already gone from 15.7 million in 2010 down to 14.2. We're actually making pretty good progress. So we may actually do better than 1 million tons by 2030 when we add this up. But anyway, this is the estimates of what these benefits would be for these measures. So again, you'll see in the feedback templates, here's the 12 categories that we came up with. There's descriptions for each one. Again, please review them and see if they work with you. And when you're going through this, you're going to find, and it's very challenging, a lot of this is really data and data organization. You're going to see things that overlap. And you might want to, within the ag sector, you're going to do renewable energy or you're going to do energy efficiency, and there's going to be overlap. And so don't be surprised. There may be overlap in some of these categories. There may be ways that you might suggest that we could improve the descriptions to reduce overlap. So it's part of it. It's actually quite challenging to describe all these measures because of this issue, but we're doing the best we can. And hopefully you can help us improve that.
Question, Jim?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Difference between electrification readiness and grid capacity and utility partnerships?
Yeah, so I can speak to what I remember. Our spreadsheet has a much better definition of this, but electrification readiness is really investment in our infrastructure to prepare it for readiness for electrification, not the electrification itself. So we found through our stakeholder process that there was a lot of like older building stock or building stock that's not ready for heat pumps because of steam conveyance or something, and they need investment in updating the shell of the building or something prior to being electrified, or maybe, prior to, implementing electric vehicles, you need more infrastructure for EVs. So this was a category where we were recognizing we need investment before we electrify. And in fact, a lot of the programs that we've operated in the last 10 years have failed to address this. We'll find programs through NYSERDA that might incentivize electrification or heat pumps, but they have no way to address the problem of some of these buildings can't even be electrified, and their funding doesn't even permit that work. So grid capacity and utility partnerships. This is more on the transmission distribution side, to make sure that the substations and infrastructure in the communities where electrification would happen can actually supply the amount of power that would be needed for that. And so, what we found examples of utilities or projects that are being cited in communities, whether they're for economic development purposes or for renewable connections, where the utilities have said that their infrastructure is not adequate. And this is across the board. This is for renewables. And again, we've seen, large, businesses or industrial parks trying to get power that they can't get. So does that make sense, or does that answer the
That's
question
perfect.
across this?
That's perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and please
Yeah, and
read our descriptions and try, and if something's not clear, help us make them better. Sorry, Todd. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just well, I'm going to just reemphasize, like, these slides are just for the presentation purposes. What we're going to be asking of you, which I will get to in a few minutes here, it has more detail. It's a spreadsheet that's got all the measures. It's got a description of the measures and then a space for you to provide feedback. So that's, we'll show you that in a minute.
Yeah, Jim, I have a question. Can you give an example of a rental housing energy initiative?
Yeah. So, for example, across the country, we've seen like rental energy codes. So for example, if someone wants a certificate of occupancy to rent a property, that they would have certain checklist items that show that the building that the rental unit is energy efficient or has adequate insulation. We're seeing that in New York, we're starting to see some communities take an interest in requiring benchmarking of rental housing, for example. There's some communities actively working on this right now. So I think the idea is, if you have, and this is particularly of interest in communities with very large rental stock, so urban communities, to ensure that through their codes and COs and things, that they reduce the burden of energy consumption or the energy expenditure on the tenants. And this is, not uncommon. Those, rental housing is often not super efficient because tenants pay the bills. So those kind of buildings don't, are kind of overlooked, that kind of thing. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. The municipality I'm in, there 60% are renters, so
Okay.
that's a concern. Thank you.
Exactly. So that would be, so in your community or your municipality, that might be of interest, is focusing on that sector and then developing some of these ideas under that. That would be great. Okay. Any other questions on this slide? Again, I can't see anyone, so I'm just plowing forward. Okay. So under the waste sector, now this is 3% of emissions, not quite as high, but in some communities bigger than others, and especially if you have landfills or if you have those point sources, they're very high. So 3% is if you socialize or the emissions across all the community, you take all the landfills and things and you attribute it to the generation of waste, it's 3 to 5%. Now, if you have a closed landfill that's still young and creating emissions, or if you have an active landfill or an incinerator, yeah, this is going to actually be significantly higher for you. So we have communities that have really large emission sources. So again, this is the local flavor. Sometimes it's more important than others. So we estimated, or we came up with a bucket of 9 measures for this sector, across different kinds of, whether it's recycling to reduce emissions or to reduce emissions from the landfills themselves. And again, on the right side, we estimated benefits from this, not quite as large because the source isn't as large, but still important. None of these sectors should be ignored. Whenever you're getting to whole percentages, it is a very important part of our problem. So within that category, here's the 9. Again, take a look at them. Kind of zero waste programs, reducing emissions from landfills, energy recovery, this kind of stuff. There's other options in here, or there may be, if we phrase it, just take a look at them and, provide feedback. Again, we want to make sure everything is relevant for each of your communities. Okay. The industrial manufacturing sector, we did a stakeholder process with a number of our industries. We identified 12 measures here, and we haven't modeled the benefits. That is to be determined. But again, there's a number of different things that our industrial sector can do. Now, I'm not sure how big the industrial sector is in Columbia County. We do have a list of the reporting industries that report to EPA's carbon mandatory greenhouse gas reduction program. We also have a list of the industries in the state that have Title V permits from DEC and air quality permits. And we put each of those directly into the municipality. So I don't remember, I actually don't remember if Columbia County has any large industrial sources, but you might. They are scattered all through the region. But again, if you do have industries in your communities and you're developing climate action plans, they are certainly important to include in the process. And here's the list of the actions that we identified through our stakeholder process. And this is different. So industries are different. They obviously have large emissions from their operations, whether it's boilers and different kind of energy processing things. But we found interest in our industries on policies like adopting low carbon, disclosure, joining, initiatives to report things, to identify and make commitments to reduce emissions from their product life cycle. So scope 3, so sourcing emissions or sourcing products that don't have an upstream footprint. So different kinds of thinking we found across this sector through our stakeholder engagement. But and we were interested to see, we found a lot of industries that were very interested in participating in the clean energy economy, producing products and services to help with electrification or to help with renewables, or to reduce their own emissions. So again, I don't know if this is relevant for everyone, but if you do have industries, this is what we found from our stakeholder engagement.
Jim?
Yes.
That includes cement manufacturing, correct?
That's yes, that is correct. So cement is in there.
Right.
So there's cement in Greene or Albany County down in Ravina. I don't know if Columbia County has that.
Right, I don't think we do anymore. But yeah, across the river they do. Thank you.
Yeah, and so if you go to of interest, like if you go in the dashboard and look at Queens, or if you look at Ravina or in Athens where there's a power plant, the Athens generation, you'll see the giant point source there completely dominates their emissions. Town of Queens is 1.2 million tons of emissions, which is about 15% of the entire region's emissions. It comes from that one facility there. So you can go
You're
through.
talking about cement. Not, you said electricity, but you mean cement.
Yeah.
Right?
So in Queens it's cement. Down in Athens, it's the Athens generation facility.
Okay.
That's electric generation. So there are two different large sources down there nearby. But anyway, you can go through and take a look if that's of interest. So, all right, moving on here. So agriculture, this is of interest, and I know it's of interest here in particular. And so region-wide, it's 3%, 5%, not giant, but this is where if you look community by community, it's a big difference. So ag communities have a much more significant footprint here compared to the cities, obviously. So so we identified 12 measures here, 12 measure categories, and we have not modeled those benefits yet. We will do that once we're done identifying the measures. And you're welcome to provide feedback, and here they are. So I know we have some farmers here and of interest. You're welcome to throw in a comment or two here, but you're going to have the opportunity to comment more. But we were looking at things about whether it's digestion or reducing emissions from soils with cover crops and a bunch of different ideas. And again, when we hold these stakeholder groups, we make sure we don't present ourselves to be the expert. We're not farmers. We have an understanding of emissions and the problem, but we really require feedback from folks who are in this industry to help us define this and state it and discuss it appropriately so that it's inclusive and makes sense for our agricultural community. So this is our first round, or really 2 rounds. We did have a stakeholder working group, but there is certainly opportunity to make refinements in here.
Jim, just a
as we
quick
move forward.
question,
Yes.
not to get into the weeds here, but in the spreadsheet you'll be providing, do you have a menu, is the description sufficient enough to say there's a series of measures that we could recommend within a broad category like agroforestry or methane emissions reduction from livestock? Because you could imagine there's, within these broad measures, many sub-measures, right?
Exactly. So what you have in that is that there's a spreadsheet with the title of what you're seeing here, and next to it is a cell that is the description of the different kinds of activities that would likely be presented there. So that's exactly where you'll find it. And that's where we need help with the overlapping issues. So, we want this. So if you find under, methane emissions from agriculture or from manure management or whatever, and you think of the different ideas that should be represented there, take a look at the other categories and try to help us reduce duplication or overlap. We want these 12 categories to be pretty, as possible, unique, because our hope is then if one of your communities develops a climate action plan and you want to talk about the ag sector, we're hoping that you adopt these high level categories here as sort of a framework. Then individually you can go under there and describe what you're doing, and then that'll help us roll it all up. So anyway, hopefully that's clear.
Jim, one other question. When you are modeling out the impact of these measures, the benefits,
Right.
Are you doing that modeling down to the community level, down to the county or municipal level, or is it just for the whole region kind of broadly?
Yeah, so for our work for this regional plan, we're just going to do it at a regional level. But our expectation is that if you're doing your own local climate action plan, you could follow the same framework to do better resolution locally with that.
Great.
So based on your own. So, and it ties like the math, the inventory, we have the data, so we transfer it into the model to simulate the benefits. And so for ag, we can populate the emissions from livestock and soils and removals, and then do our estimates based on those totals. So we want to deflect, emissions from livestock based on, say, 3 policies inside this grid. We can estimate that. Locally, if you want to do it at a county level or community level, you can do the same thing. So you can take your inventory locally and populate it into your kind of a measures template or tool and estimate what your benefits would be if you're doing better or you're doing something different than other communities. So we would encourage you to do it locally, but for us, we can't go down that far.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we're getting pretty close here. This is the last slide. So the land sequestration part, this is not included in the inventory. This is the work in progress that we're working with you all on, actually, is to incorporate the removals component and the sequestration by different kinds of land types, whether also with ag lands or just natural working lands. For those of you who are in greenhouse gas accounting and the AFOLU, agricultural land use and forestry, right now we have only the ag represented. This is the land use component. So we went through, we reviewed some regional plans, we reviewed guidance, reviewed information, and we identified 8 broad categories here so far, but this is probably the most work in progress. We have not had any official feedback from anyone yet. So your group here would be the first ones to provide feedback on this. And so we're really looking forward to it. We identified for sequestration these 8 categories. So a lot of afforestation stuff, land use and planning kind of policies to improve sequestration, doing carbon stock inventories and including them in your greenhouse gas mitigation inventory, so a separate component, this kind of stuff. We have descriptions of it. And again, this is an area that's, we know that within the ag sector, you have sequestration. So there's a lot there too. So we're trying to figure out, when we talk about measures, we have an agriculture sector. We know sequestration is going to be there. This land sequestration component, we kind of thought about it as more natural working lands policy as opposed to ag. So we were trying to separate them, but I don't know if that's going to work. We're not sure. So take a look at it. Take a look at the ag sector. It does talk about sequestration there as well. And then this is really more natural lands and kind of that kind of thing. So it's a work in progress, but help us think this through, which would be fantastic. So anyway, I think that is it. I'm gonna, unless you have questions, Todd, if you're still here, I'm gonna turn it back to you, because now we're at the phase here where you can talk about the spreadsheet and how to engage and give some feedback.
Yes, thanks, Tim. And so, you know, our approach here, and you're kind of the, I want to say guinea pig, but you're the first one we're engaging in this fashion, and you're probably the great group to do it, because, you know, quite frankly, if all the counties had this kind of an arrangement of working together at a county level with a group of municipal representatives, it would be wonderful to move this stuff forward. It's a great mechanism for talking about and coordinating these things. So we wanted to get more of a methodical kind of feedback from you. And so what we've done is we've taken from our kind of master spreadsheet with what's going to do all the calculations or impacts and all that, just pulled out the measures for each sector. You can't see it all on this slide. This is just a screenshot. Essentially, there's a spreadsheet on our website, and we'll show you how to get to that. And what we're asking you to do is to download that spreadsheet, and each tab is an economic sector. So we've got then the measures we've developed. There's the general name, which you saw on the slide. There's a description, so there's more information on it. And we're asking you, and we're providing space for comments on any of them that you feel like commenting on. You don't have to comment if there's not a need for something, but really what we're hoping, because this is a regional plan, and as Jim has noted, we want to make sure the categories are comprehensive, but they're a little more general at a regional level, in that you've got space within them for some of your more detailed particular things that you'd be doing for any of these particular measures. And again, you might not be doing every measure. That's fine. You don't need to note that per se. Although we'd ask you to note which ones you are interested in. So we're asking for a few things here. We're saying, here's a comment on these if you feel maybe they're misworded, maybe you don't understand what we're asking and you're just looking for some clarity. And then whether that's a particular measure you're interested in, and just maybe note some of the ways you might be interested in it. So there's just two columns where we're asking for that. And then at the bottom of each of these rows would be space to add more measures. If you thought, well, geez, we're doing something here, and these guys, there's no category here in which we could fit that. And then you could add additional measures in any of these sectors. As you'll see, they're just tabs for each sector when you download the full spreadsheet. So you can add additional measures if you think we missed something. But again, we don't want to go down into the granularity of every municipality per se, but have just a little more general regional buckets where you can fit in within there the maybe more specific things that you're doing. And that's where, if you indicate ones that you think you might be interested in, you might not know all of that. Now you're just starting your process. You can just note that in that far right column. But again, we have, and what we're asking you to do is do this as a group. So in order for us to be able to collate all these comments, we're asking you to essentially download the spreadsheet, and you'll see there's instructions on the first tab, and then there's each tab is a sector. But we're asking you to put your name and a contact for if let's say it's the county or any of the individual communities that we're asking you to do it as well. But we want you to go back to your own community or your own arrangement here and discuss it amongst yourselves and come to some agreement on what you've evaluated, and then submit back to us, email back the spreadsheet. That's your contribution. Jim, if you click to the next slide. So when you go to our web page, you'll see this orange area where that's, can't miss it, and click on that. That's where you'll download the spreadsheet. And then you'll be able to, again, follow the directions. You'll be able to just add your municipality and the contact, and then you'll be able to go through the tabs and note if you feel to comment on any of them, to comment, note whether they're of interest to you and how, and add any additional measures if we missed anything, and then send it back to us. We're asking you to send it back to us within 45 days. We know if we said 30 to 45, but we understand, for example, it might be your next meeting if you're willing to talk about all this and go through it, and then that gives a little more time to then just send back your version. We don't, it's not going to be nothing's absolutely perfect in this. We know everything is an evolutionary process, and you're just starting your discussions around these, but this will help to maybe spark some of that conversation. And
what if
you'll
you
also
just stick that web link in the chat for
Sure.
us? Thank you.
Sure. Tara, can you throw that in there? And
Yep.
yeah, and that'll take you to this page, and what we're thinking, this is a kind of interesting way to continue to join the collaborative, if you will, is and if you can click to the next slide, I think it might be saying that. Maybe it's not. No, go back to the previous slide just for a second then. What it explains it on the spreadsheet, but we're saying or thinking that if you provide this feedback to us, then you become part of our collaborative. So on our website, when you go there, we list the regional agencies we've worked with. We want to start getting a whole list of counties and communities who have also contributed input on this. And so we would think, well, okay, then if you provide back to us a spreadsheet with your comments, and it don't feel like you have to, there's some criteria you have to comment on every single thing. As long as even if you gave back an empty spreadsheet that said, this looks good, that's fine. You're part of the collaborative then, unless you otherwise choose not to be. And you can tell us that. You can still give us feedback, but say, you know what, we don't want to be listed on your website. If that's what you choose, that's fine too. But it's just a way of kind of getting broad support for what we're doing, and an opportunity for feedback. And then go ahead.
Just to be clear, you want one spreadsheet from each municipality. So from the county,
That's right.
one spreadsheet from the towns. If folks are bringing it back to their towns, one spreadsheet, not multiple ones.
That's well, each of the communities would have their own. So
Yes,
it could be, and
not
so
individuals or other entities.
that's right. That's right. At this stage, this is municipal feedback, and it's just, rather than having 3 different sets of comments from one municipality, and then if they conflict with each other, and I don't want to be refereeing what ones we pay attention to. So you guys will have to debate it yourselves and then come to some reasonable consensus. And that's how we're trying this approach. We think it'll probably work out. But you can let us know about that too. And so then that's kind of the main thing. And the link on this website also takes you to the dashboard. So Tara had posted that previously, but when you go to the collaborative website, you'll be able to click to get the spreadsheet. You download it, you guys discuss it, you fill it out, and then email it back to me. It says that in the directions on the spreadsheet. And also you can review then the dashboard. And just in the email, when you respond back when you send back your spreadsheet to us, if you have other comments about the dashboard, you can put them right in the email when you submit it back to us. And just keep in mind that this is, it is definitely a work in progress, in that we're going to have more there's no backup on it of the sources and things like that. We'll have a report that can be referenced as well, and we will have a means of comparing the previous inventory to the updated one, which we don't yet have. So we're working on all those things now.
Just
So
so I
any further
understand
questions on? Yeah.
That was actually one of my questions was, is there a methods link on, when I was looking around on the website just now about the maps, what do you call it? The
Dashboard?
Dashboard. I couldn't see anywhere to get to that said how you came up with those numbers. Is that something still to be
That's
developed?
something that's coming. Yeah, we
Okay.
just didn't get that up for visual. So you have the visual representation, but we don't have the associated report yet, but
Okay.
we will be providing that as well.
In any timeline on that? Is that within a couple of months or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's
I can speak to that as someone who's been working on this inventory. So there is a regional guidance that we helped author for DEC for the original inventory that was done, and it's called the 2015 Regional and Community Greenhouse Gas Inventory Guidance. You can find it at DEC's website. It is the backbone of these products. So it describes a really large document, describes everything. What we've done here and what we will be releasing is a methodology update. We'll be going through we'll provide all of the different sector sources and describe where the data came from. And, it'll be concise, but it's going to be really compendium of a much larger plan. So maybe we'll link both of them there.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And so that's the main ask. And are there further questions about that? Because I have one more thing I want to point out, but it's a little further down the line, but it's tied to this. So I just want to make sure if there's other questions so far. And you may have questions when you download the spreadsheet, and that's fine. You can email those questions if you're stuck on something or whatnot, and we can respond back to you on that. But any other questions so far? Okay, so then the other thing to note, and this is a little further down the line. So again, we're asking.
Sorry to interrupt. One question. I just was looking at the spreadsheet quickly. Maybe I haven't looked at it enough, but basically these tabs are the title of the measure and a brief description. Is there more information somewhere on the measures that we can look at as we go through this and provide feedback, or is that you just want us to react to a brief description and you'll integrate that in?
That's right, because again, this is at the regional scale, so we want to make sure things that you're doing, you can find a bucket to put it in. Are the buckets there? And if there's any that are missing, then or they're not worded in a way that you think and it could be tweaked to fit it, then put that in the comments or add a new measure. Jim, any further?
I would say, I think it's a very good question. I think it would be great if you add examples of the kinds of things that you would include in that bucket. So that, if you take the brief description, you might add some, within, so this would work and here's the kind of thing we would do, just so we're aware of them. So, that's up to you to provide feedback at that level. But I think it would be good.
Thanks.
So the last point to make today from our point of view is this last slide, Jim, and that is that we want to, over time, so once we have gotten feedback throughout the region on these measures and fine-tune the inventory, and we're at that stage where we've done some of the analysis too, so we're at the stage of basically getting ready to publish the final plan. We see an important aspect of implementation to be to work with local communities on local climate action planning. And we will be able to provide technical support for facilitating that. We won't be in a situation with funding, the program funding that we have to be able to go and do your own local climate action plans, but we'll be able to help you to go through the measures we have at a local level, to talk through them and see which ones might be of interest to you. So it's kind of a document that can seed your local discussions and to be able to go over your local inventory with you. And so, as you know, you've worked with Terry, you've worked with Haley, so we have an outreach team that's going to be available to be able to do that at the local level. So anybody who's submitted back their spreadsheet to us, we will be reaching back out to you at some point down the line, unless you're like in a position where you're already starting that now, then reach out to us and let us know right now. And if you're working already with either Tara or Haley, to reach out to them to be able to start to work with you locally on your own climate action planning, because that's how we see a lot of this stuff being implemented, obviously, is through at the local level.
David, do you know how many municipalities? I mean, I know the county is working on their CAP plan, but are there any municipalities within Columbia County that are working on individual CAP plans?
I don't know. We haven't, as far as I know, we haven't done a count or reached out to determine where folks are at, or formally encourage them to participate in our county action planning along that timeline. We did that with the adaptation plan. that was kind of easy. That was kind of all done through Cornell. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question, and it's really the time to start doing that so we can engage as many, we can continue to kind of push this down to the more local level. We'll do ours, but I know there's a lot of interest in it. I know a lot of communities are doing that, but I don't have a count. I don't know if Don has it. Has anyone
Yeah.
counting?
I don't have a count. I know there are quite a few that are doing both GovOps caps and I think a couple are doing community caps too. I don't have a definitive list yet.
Yep. John?
Yeah, we've discussed this a number of times in Clavert, and our feeling is that just given our limitations, that if the county can move ahead and some of us individually can be involved in that, then that's the basis for starting to spread the interest within our community. Because although we do have some comprehensive planning going on, we just don't have the engagement, that's sufficient to do much.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
You know, I should
County's
just-
key. County's key.
I just want to note one other thing too, that's an option for communities as they kind of consider delving into their own local climate action planning is, if there's the funding isn't available or there's not ways to do a full plan over a longer period of time, we can still meet with you to talk about measures individually that you may want to select from the menu, if you will, and undertake, and just point to ways to just pick things that you may want to work on. That's not necessarily a complete written plan per se. So that's just another option for kind of easing into doing some things that aren't necessarily a whole plan.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole point here is action, right? So you're creating a menu of measures for us to look at, which is a great framework, very helpful. We might add to it, we might choose from it, but as a county, and then we'll create that framework hopefully for the county in our action plan, and then communities can engage with that at the local level and look at those measures, because ultimately that's what we want, is not necessarily more plans, but more action. So unless the plans are driving action. Thanks. Tom?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, Philmont does have a climate action plan for government operations, and we have started our first initiative. What's going to be the obstacle is funding. So right. I just want to bring that into the picture.
Yep, it will be. Thanks, Tom. Okay, Todd, what else? And Jim, first of all, thank you so much for this. You covered a lot of grounds very clearly and created this framework, which is very transparent, very collaborative. So I just want to thank you both for all this work, not to mention the inventory, which is a lot to mention. That is an incredible amount of work for us to use and draw off of, and gets us so far down the process here in the county and makes our job so much easier. So thank you for that contribution. We look forward to working with you on the land use side, particularly, as you know, and I don't know if there's more to discuss right now. We will on that piece or more broadly, but we will in this meeting hopefully discuss a process for providing you that feedback within 45 days from the county. And then we will communicate that back to our local communities for as much feedback as we can garner in the county. But I just want to thank you, because it's obvious you've put so much thought. There's a lot of structure. It's very clear for such a large amount of information covering so much. So thank you.
You're welcome. And we're lucky to have a guy like Jim, who's the expert in putting these kinds of things together.
We have a question from John, or a comment. You're muted, John.
In the chat, I put in a question: how soon will a copy of this either the recording or the presentation, be available for us to share locally?
Do you guys share your recordings? I mean, because from the perspective of the things we covered, I think the spreadsheet would be the better way to look at the measures than the slides, and dashboard live would be the better way to look at it than just the screenshots. So I think the core of what we have going to our website is the best way to go at it.
But if we want to share it with other people who weren't at this meeting, could we That might be for us internally. I don't know how soon Dawn can get the recording of this meeting out.
This meeting's available immediately, right?
Okay.
Yeah, right after it's done. It's already posted on our website. So
I think it's probably better to send them to the recording because it includes the description and all of
Mhm.
Jim's explanations and the questions throughout than just this slide deck. Great. Okay. Well, thank you both so much for that. We will continue our meeting. We'll continue discussing if there aren't any other questions or comments, and we will be back in touch shortly. Part of our discussion is on that land use piece and where we're at in our process. But we very much look forward to continuing to work with you both and want to thank you again.
Yeah, thanks
Okay,
you guys.
thank you. And thanks
Thank you so
for,
much.
in
Awesome.
advance for your input. So thanks. I will hang up then.
Okay, take care. Wow, that was great. So we need to provide them feedback. This is also an opportunity for us to really engage in what this looks like, this cap, in terms of what we're looking at for the next 2 years for this project that we're embarking on. So it's a great orientation for us to dig in. And I wanted just to open it up to thoughts on how we can efficiently do that. I have some thoughts, but see if folks are thinking about how we can deliver comments on that spreadsheet in a concerted way together over the next, by 45 days, by the mid-March, let's say. Jennifer?
Yeah, I've actually haven't used the comment feature in Google spreadsheets, but it seems like it might be easiest if, rather than trying to each of us deal with the actual Excel file or whatever format they have it in, if there was a way that for us we can, because I know I won't be able to do it all like live in a meeting. I'd want to be able to sit down with it and think it through and compose my thoughts and be able to make notes. But maybe if we could all kind of have some time to do that so that our comments are uploaded onto a shared Google Doc of some sort, then that could be the basis for a more efficient meeting where we talk through it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll
It's
let
just-
other people add their 2
yeah.
cents. That's a good point, and we're going to figure out a process right now, what we're going to do. Brenda.
Well, maybe we could do a hybrid of that. We could give a certain time limit for people to read, think, and put their thoughts together, and then have a work group, rather than having someone, probably Dawn as our staff person, going through 23 pages of 23 spreadsheets and trying to kind of, find the common denominators or make decisions. But if people had the time to kind of read, organize, and be ready for that work group, it might be more effective. And the other thing I was thinking is, if we're going to take this back to our town task force, maybe we should allow them to, a timeline to prepare their comments. So we'd have those individual spreadsheets from each town as a working document as well. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, I think your first comment on how to do this efficiently, if everyone could review by the next meeting and come, I hear your point, Jennifer, about like, can we have one document that everyone can kind of input their comments before that meeting? But I also think about the kind of work that would require with Dawn. And I'm not sure what's better, but if we all prepared and we could go through these and spend 2 hours and be really at the next meeting, very rigorous in our time management to cover all of this, perhaps with some follow-up. If we don't get to everything or not every comment, we can go through and people can provide their comments. But it is an awful lot to cover in 2 hours, and there are many of us here. So it is a challenge. I don't know how thorough that would be. At the very least, everyone should be downloading this, if you have the time, and hopefully you do, and going through as thoroughly as possible with any comments that you have, anything missing, all the things that they've asked for. So we're prepared to provide that input. And we would like to get all the input, and maybe that's what it takes is everyone putting their input in together, and Don and I and perhaps a couple other people kind of going through all that and just kind of synthesizing the input, and then we can review it at the next meeting. It's going to be a
guess-
lot for us each to give our input live in one meeting. I don't think that's
Right.
feasible.
And I think also if a number of us might be saying the same thing, and if we can kind of review each other's comments first, then we'll know whether or not we need to raise our hand. And I don't know, maybe not on the spreadsheet, but since there's only whatever 7 categories, if we could just start a Google Doc that had those 7 categories on it, and we can just be typing our notes on that within those, or some way to kind of have all of us put information together so that we can then quickly say, okay, under transportation, these are the like 5 comments people made.
Yeah. Well, and if we're disciplined and we read what's there and we don't duplicate, we really work hard not to duplicate comments. It'll make our job of synthesizing and refining the comments a lot easier. So if you go in there and there are already some comments in there, don't just go ahead and add yours without first reviewing what's there.
Right.
Christina?
Okay, so we reviewed some of these spreadsheets earlier on in the process at the Clean Energy Hub, and we did exactly that. We just everyone commented all in like a working document, and if someone had a comment very similar to yours, you just augmented it or added a +1. So then when you were correlating all the comments, you were able to prioritize them more easily.
I like that idea. So if you, rather than staying silent, if something you feel strongly about is there, you register your support by adding some check, like you're saying, so we can prioritize that. We can build that in some sort of system to do that. That's great.
So then would we create, just to think that through, would we create our own link to our spreadsheet for that purpose?
Yeah, I think we'll create a Google Doc,
Oh, a
Google
Doc?
Sheet,
Okay.
a Google Sheet. Probably take the Excel and turn it into a Google Sheet is my thought. That may be a little cumbersome, putting a lot of comments in those fields, but we'll see how it works. And then maybe we can add another column which allows for specific checks or affirmation. Maybe there's a counter so people can say yes, 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 and they can just go through. And if something's missing, they add something. The problem is people adding more rows to a spreadsheet can become very sloppy. So we'll have to think it through. I think Don and I will take a crack at that, and then if it's not working, then we'll do that as quickly as possible and send this all out. If it's not working, then structurally or for some reason you're not able to use it, then just provide us the feedback and we'll try to improve it as we go. And then at the end, we'll have to synthesize it and put it back in the format that they've asked for it.
Was Christina, was that who just now said that they looked at it already? Did you just use a separate Google Doc for your comments rather than commenting on the spreadsheet?
We did. We made a copy of it in our hub drive and made it like a working document before we sent it back. And that this was months
the
ago
actual
on the
spreadsheet though, rather than
Yeah.
a separate, just a text doc. Okay, got it.
That's what I was thinking. That would make, it'd be just one fewer step.
Yeah.
Which is what, Brenda, just explain that a little more.
Christina did. They copied the spreadsheet and then worked from the copy of the spreadsheet. Everybody had access to that spreadsheet.
That's what we're talking about. We would take the spreadsheet and we would turn it into a Google Sheet that we would share with everyone. Perhaps that works, or maybe it needs to be a doc and not a sheet, because that would allow people more flexibility to add. And we can put tables in a doc as well to help facilitate this a little easier. And then we would go back and synthesize it after our next meeting and get it back in the format they need it in.
You can also use the comment feature in a Google Doc, which can be useful
Yep.
instead of adding a new field.
Yep. That's good. So we'll work on something. And again, if it's not satisfactory, if people are really having trouble with it or they don't think it's workable, just provide us some feedback and we'll make some changes on the fly. We'll try to get everyone's input. I think the key is we need everyone to do this before next meeting, or else we will not have a good comprehensive amount of comments. The other question, Brenda, that you raised is a good one about towns. Really what we should do right away is take this back to our towns as quickly as possible. And assuming there's a climate smart group to hand this off to. I mean, I think they're on their own. They should provide their comments, and that would be additive. I think it would be hard for us to synthesize all of our thoughts from the county perspective and then also try to bring in all of those. We may not have enough time. I like the idea, Brenda, of trying to solicit that information specific from our town. So if you can do it, by all means, and then add those comments to what we're doing. But as a formal process, I don't know if we have enough time. But we definitely want to encourage those towns that are active to do their own.
I agree with you. I think it's burdensome to try and coordinate it, but I think also a lot of the feedback that I would have would come from my Climate Smart Committee.
Yep. So that's great. And if that works and you have the ability to get that feedback quickly from your particular towns, groups, that's all the more reason to get this, like today, emailed out to the chair of your Climate Smart Task Force or your group, the whole group, and explain this process, the timeline mid-March, that they should submit a town-wide set of comments, and that any comments they have, the sooner they can get them to each of us, we will work to get them in our county-wide comments as well. Does that sound right, folks?
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Let's move along. We have and we'll spend I think we'll spend most of the next meeting doing that, going through this. And again, it's not only for these comments, but this is a really great way to get into some of the more granular aspects of what we're actually talking about. We say we're doing a climate action plan. So it's a great orientation and prep. Okay, can we move on? Anything else on that? All right. Our own climate action plan is we are at a point now where we're Don, you want to give us an update on exactly where we're at with hearing about the grant and moving forward with a CAP committee?
Yes, actually, I have, again, nothing from DEC has come through yet. So we're still pretty much at the same state we were at the last meeting about hearing about the grant process. They still have to go through some process at the state level before they send us any kind of a contract that we can review. So that is basically where we're at with that. Last meeting we had talked about discussing what kind of a CAP committee or CAP working group would be put together, how it would be made up. I think we made a little bit of progress with that. Brenda, I don't know if you have talked. I know Dave and I talked about it, and Dave sent some ideas to Supervisor Adams. I don't know if anything is.
I did respond to that.
Yeah. I mean, basically, just to give everyone a quick update, this is what we're thinking. Happy to get more feedback, but two supervisors, ideally, in my opinion, Brendan Denal, that would make the most sense. Maybe more supervisors. We're trying to keep this small. Don, two task force members, as CLC rep, ideally Terrence, who's been involved, an external farmer. We really have to keep the group small, so it has to be one. We talked about maybe Will Yandick, if he's available, very busy, but he would be great. We also discussed the idea of the Farmscape Ecology Program potentially participating. County officials, so solid waste engineering, DPW. We noted that the staffs are very small and they're very busy, but perhaps department heads, Wendy Madsen, who has good experience with this task force, and Ray Jerkowski, perhaps, and then also CEDC, so perhaps Mike Tucker, and then others. The Public Works Committee, it was noted, is chaired by Ron Knott, Supervisor Knott, who also has a lot of experience with this task force and covers a lot of areas that are relevant to the plan. So perhaps Ron might want to join us as well. And that was kind of what we came up with. This is at the discretion of the board and the chairman. So once we have, what is the timing and how do we, that's the one question, Brendan Denal, can we put forward a request to the chair with a recommendation, a list? We would probably want to reach out to more of these people first to make sure they're actually interested. But what would you suggest, Brenda and Denal, the process should be for us to put this list as quickly as possible in front of the board or the chairman so we can have this approved and hit the ground running?
Denal, I'll speak first. I think this needs to go to the chairman before it goes to committee. Because the chairman is going to basically define the approach to this or confirm the approach to staffing the committee. And I think Denal and Don and I should probably try and meet with the chairman before the committee meeting. Committee, Don, correct me if I'm wrong. I think if it's going to go to the committee, it would have to go by next Friday. If it was going to go to a February committee. Is that the material submission date for the February
Yes,
committee?
Yes.
Yeah, by the 14th, yes. Looks
Don,
like-
Denal, do you agree that we should speak with the chairman first?
Completely.
Great. Okay. Well, there are some people on the list here, like Terrence, Will Yandick. I don't know if Terrence is on the call. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but where we
I'm here.
Okay, great. Hi, Terrence. We just need to, check Mike Tucker, some other folks, which task force members we want to put forward. So why don't we try to do that in the next day and just get a list that we think, we feel comfortable recommending, and then and hope y'all can get a meeting with the chairman before the deadline. Does that sound okay?
I think we can get a meeting. Denal, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do you feel about the task force reaching out to individuals prior to a conversation with the chairman?
I think we should do that as well, Brenda.
Okay.
Just not to say you're invited to join this, very clearly saying, this is kind of what we're thinking, and would you be interested? Or, so just
Or you
to be-
have no choice.
I want to be clear. You're okay with us reaching out to like a Will Yandick and saying, if you are asked to join, would you be interested? Should we even put your name forward as a recommendation?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, great.
Okay. So I'm okay with that.
Great. So Don and I will start doing that. We'll reach out to folks, and Don, let's talk about this after, as well as the spreadsheet for comments.
And if you get back to Denal and me, then we'll try and schedule a meeting before Wednesday of next week.
Great. And if anyone on the task force has an opinion on the list that I just went over, or ideas that are not captured there, feel free to share that with Don, me and Don, but do so quickly so we can incorporate your thoughts. Great.
And if it goes to committee in February, it would be approved by the full board in March, assuming this is not the chairman's commitment, not an appointment. I mean, there are some appointments the chairman makes without BOS approval. So we just have to find out if it's that kind of appointment or if it's one that will require BOS approval.
Great. Well, I mean, if we got this approved by March, that would be good timing. I think that would be great. It keeps us on good pace. Don, anything new on the Don and Jennifer on the land use subcommittee? I mean, we continue to get information from CAFRE, and we're looking at that. And I know, Jennifer, you're in a semester-long kind of pilot project, so I'm not sure there's much of an update.
I think Jennifer already left. She had to leave a little bit early, but yeah, we did. Her and I did discuss some of her work that she's doing at bars. So we shared a little information on different soil types that are predominantly found on some of the active farms in Columbia County, and so she has what I think she has what she needs to move forward with her the class she's at Bard. The information she has for that. I haven't heard anything from CAFRE yet since last month either.
Okay.
Nope.
So maybe we follow up with Colin. That sounds good. Okay. I know that eClay had reached out to, I'm not sure if anyone's on the call, but to just talk about how they might participate in this process or could provide value. Because we're really short on time, we don't have a lot of time to get into that in great detail, but just the long and short of it is that when we go to hire a consultant to do this work, and they potentially hire subcontractors within that broad consultancy with the county, there'll be an RFP and a process for everyone to participate and put in their bids. So Madison Hodges, thank you. So I don't know, Madison, if you wanted to add anything quickly to the discussion from eClay's perspective, or maybe it's too early.
Yeah, I can quickly mention, first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm spent a couple years in the Hudson Valley, former student of DIN at the BARD CEP program. So great to connect with you all. We would love to respond to your RFP when it comes time for that to be released. But another option for you all to consider is simply becoming an IGLE member and joining the IGLE network, which for your population bucket of Columbia County would be about $2,200 a year. And through that, you would receive access to our greenhouse gas accounting software, which is being upgraded right now. We're combining power with Climate View, a Swedish tech firm, to update our ClearPath software. So it'll be a bit more sophisticated and have more functionalities. So if you become an IGLE member, we'll help you figure out how to use that software. And then we also have office hours once a week where people come for greenhouse gas inventorying support. So maybe as you're working through your inventories and you have a question on how a certain piece of data is usually handled by other local governments, we could be here to answer those questions. We also have report templates for you to use, and quality. Another common way that we support with greenhouse gas inventories is providing a third party quality review. So I know you want to be respectful of your time and not take up too much, but I think IGLE membership might be useful to you as you embark on this inventorying and kind of action planning process. And we'd love to continue the conversation as you're interested and as you see fit.
Great. Thank you so much, Madison. We will certainly consider that, and we will be in touch with the RFP. We will probably, I would imagine, the idea of membership and its benefits, which seem many, are relevant within the context of the work we're doing over the next 2 years. So I think that's part of the evaluation of, when we go forward with our own plan and we're ready to hire someone, what role does the eClay platform on these benefits play in the work over the next 2 years? But so we will certainly revisit that question soon. But thank you for joining us and for your continued work in this area. It's great. Any questions or thoughts there? Thanks, Madison. All right, Don, thank you for this great progress report and roadmap that you have put together. Do you want to add any other comments on that?
No, I think it's fairly complete, Dave. I mean, I did some rearranging of the sections, tried to put them in, an order, order that made sense. John Bradley gave me some feedback from Town of Cloverwick's perspective, but I haven't received much feedback from anyone else. So, if you have anything to say, just let me know. And I can, but I think it's almost nearly ready to distribute. So unless anybody has some more comments on it.
It's really thorough and comprehensive. So thank you for.
Yeah. One thing I was wondering if it's, I called it the 2024 update because it was like a snapshot at the end of 2024. So I don't know if I should change the date to 2025 or not, but
You might as well, because you're finalizing it in 2025
Yeah,
and it'll have a longer shelf life, perhaps. How often do you expect this update would occur?
well, it's by the CSC standards, we're supposed to do it once a year. Once a year. I tried to lay it out in a way that it could be easily updated just by like adding things to our timeline or so I think it's fairly easy to update from now on. But my plan is to have it done annually. Yeah.
And as a roadmap, you see this as a tool for us to identify future actions and projects?
Yeah, right. I mean, as we the list of actions, that's that's just sort of a personal take on what I hear being discussed at the meetings and what I see, the capabilities and interests from the different department heads that I talk to. I think that's a reasonable list of actions that we could work on. It's to get the silver. It is a lot of work. So I don't know if, and the way I have it added up, it is right at like the 300 level that we would need. And I don't, really don't know if there's any great benefit for us to reach
Right.
silver other than to say, yes, brownie points. We have reached the silver status. So
yeah. Well, we always said that we never wanted this to become a chase for points if it didn't, if it wasn't warranted by real action that made an impact. So I think that's still our goal. But this is a great tool for us to use. We're not going to just chase points for points' sake and create work for ourselves to do that if it doesn't have a real benefit. So, and that's my opinion. I mean, people may differ. But this is trying to be practical. So I think our action plan is, going to be a driver for action for many years, hopefully, and how we communicate and engage with the community and really work toward achieving some of these measures. So anyway, thank you for this. Any other comments, last comments, please provide to Don before he finalizes it. And that is great. Where is our agenda? There it is. Okay. Any other updates from CLC first, Terrence? The Community Conservation Plan?
Yeah, we had a public meeting last month, and there's going to be another kind of public engagement meeting that will be in person. That will be on May 3rd. Prior to our public meeting, we did have a stakeholder meeting, and that was every municipality should have been contacted by Sam Calhoun, who was organizing that and is leading this project. If any town hasn't been participating and is interested in that, or if anybody wants more information on the next public engagement meeting, please email me and I can connect you with Sam. And so we have these meetings. We're working with a couple of consultants, and we'll continue working on that through the summer and hope to have a draft by the fall.
Great. Okay. Christina, any updates from the hub?
Hi, nothing too big. We had a lovely event in Valatia over the weekend. Thank you to all on this call and otherwise who helped make that happen. And we do have some upcoming events. We have one at the Chatham Library on February 19th. I'll be doing a presentation with Dana Grover from New York Clean Heat. And then on February 18th, we will be participating in an affordable housing fair at the Spark of Hudson. And I also just wanted to say we're having a lot of change up in the clean energy world right now with some of the executive orders coming down on the federal level, but all of the NYSERDA programs should remain funded, perhaps at different funding levels for individuals, but those programs should be around. And that's all for me.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, Lindsay, anything from CCE?
Yeah, Lindsay wasn't able to be on today, Dave, but she did send a little email. Just wanted to mention that Cornell Cooperative Extension, they expect to be working with the town of Stuyvesant on some resilient policy analysis. One of the CSC actions, and also the town of Gallatin on some education engagement policy, and education engagement actions, social media, and some disaster preparedness information, developing that for the towns.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. All right. Any other actions, local actions updates, anything else? Opening up the floor for any other last comments or Don, what?
Yeah,
what's up?
one more from Steve Powers. He had brought up the Hudson Valley Flood Resilience Network last month. He wanted them to come today, but we were very busy, so I told him we didn't have room for that, but he was wondering if we might want to have them next month. A little presentation on that.
Now I'm concerned about next month's meeting being busy, given that
Yeah.
we'll be trying to review, dozens of measures in 1-2 hour session. So I don't think that'll work, but I really don't have I don't have a clear sense of how we're going to run that meeting next month, given the scope. We're going to try
at the
be
last
comprehensive
meeting.
and
At
efficient.
the last meeting, we talked about it, trying to contact someone from the county because they thought that would be a better, but I guess they haven't connected yet for some reason.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly, I think it's really important, and we should get him on it. Maybe we can do that in April.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm back on the call. It's Steve.
Oh, there you are, Steve.
Yeah. So, there's no urgency, whatever. We can certainly try to see if they would be willing to do it in April.
It's great. It's really important that we understand. These presentations are a great way to amplify what these groups are doing and what these initiatives are doing for us all. So let's definitely do it. I'm just afraid it won't work in March now.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks, Steve. Josh, you have something?
Yeah, I do. Hi everyone.
Hi.
I just want to mention that the City of Hudson has an RFP out right now. It closes on February 28th for an administrator for a community choice aggregation program for the city. So it's something we've been exploring over the last couple of years, and we've finally gotten the RFP ready, and the Common Council has passed a resolution and expressing interest in this type of program. So we'll see where that goes. But if others are interested in talking more about CCA programs or partnering in some way, please reach out.
Great. That's exciting. Bill.
Yes, to Josh's comment, when the village of Kinderhook signed up CCA, we passed the local law back in 2019, and right now there's the group. It was about 13 municipalities. We're the only one in Columbia County at this point, but we've been talking. I happen, full disclosure, to be the treasurer of the CDCE, which is working on a CCA and looking for an administrator. I don't know if you've contacted anybody with the CDCE.
I have not. Yeah, I have not. I'm trying to get the word out right now. I've reached out to
I did hear about Hudson trying to do this, and I brought to the board of the CDCE. So I'll go back to them. We're going to meet again. I can send them emails about it too, and maybe we can give you some information about what we're doing, because they wanted to send out letters to municipal elected officials, to the ones that have signed up, so that they know that we're still here. It's only been 6 years, but we're still here, because the big holdback was the entire group had opted for 100% renewable energy that met or beat regular utility prices for electricity, and the administrator that we had originally approached was unable to do that. So we've gone back, and now we're in the process of looking at one. And I know as far as the state goes, there were a lot of issues with CCAs, and the PSC had put a moratorium on it. And they have recently approved one plan, which is one of the people we're talking to. So I can give you some details and give you contacts to reach out to if you like.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that very much, Bill. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Christina, thanks for that note about Kingston too. I was in touch with Mid-Hudson Energy Transition folks. I know they just got approval for the Kingston CCA program from the PSC. So hopefully things will start moving there as well. And yeah, we were talking to them about potentially being involved.
That's great. And Josh, as you go through this process, it'd be great to educate us all on how it goes, and that would be beneficial. So thanks so much. Any other last comments or updates from your community? Well, thank you all for joining. It's a wild time out there in the world. We all know that. And we will work in the realm of facts and information. And as we gain knowledge on how these changes that are happening at the federal level are affecting us or might affect us in terms of funding, we will incorporate those into the discussion. Thank you all for your sobriety and your focus, and we'll continue. Please download that spreadsheet. Well, don't download it. We will get back to you. Don and I will get back to you with a document for you to use for reviewing and providing comments. And then Don, we will also follow up on the CAP committee list recommendations. So please don't hesitate to contact Don and I if you have any other thoughts on anything we've discussed. But thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don and David.
Thanks, everyone.